Here we're reading for grammar, and let's go ahead and read generally. This digital artist primarily uses a suite of software tools to create illustrations for children's books. To manifest the warm and welcoming atmospheres that are a signature of her work, though, she occasionally relies on more traditional art techniques, such as painting with watercolors. So, one thing that's really important is you have to remember to always read all the way to the end, because these often have a different sort of perception in your mind if you only read up to where the blank is. Uh, what's really going on here is we have a modifier. The word though is like a little timeout in the sentence. Now, of course, a clause has a subject and a verb, something like John jumped, or since John jumped would be a dependent clause. A modifier is something that's missing the subject, the verb, or both. In particular, the middle modifier. John, while jumping, twisted his ankle. The middle modifier works as kind of a timeout in the sentence, and it could be something as simple as the word though. So in this situation, to manifest the warm and welcoming atmospheres that are a signature of her work, though, she occasionally relies on more traditional art techniques, such as painting with watercolors. So just notice that the whole sentence kind of goes from beginning to end with a lot of flow to it, and it's just very briefly interrupted by the modifier, which is totally okay. But we couldn't have named this first part of the sentence as a clause by itself because that's actually a modifier there. There's no real subject-verb combination toward the beginning of that sentence. For instance, if we said, she did this to manifest the warm and welcoming atmospheres. Now I'm putting a subject verb at the beginning, and we could call this part an independent clause. But that part of the sentence right there is, guess what? Another modifier. So you have a modifier, another modifier, and finally the independent clause. She relies. So that's our subject-verb combination. It's toward the beginning of the sentence, and it gives us what we need for this second part of the sentence to be the independent clause right over here. So the answer that puts it all together perfectly here is A. Now, looking at some of the other answer choices, we're not going to go aside and say though with a comma in the beginning and not have a comma at the end. Looking at C, semicolons are for two independent clauses, and we already mentioned that the first part of this sentence is not an independent clause, so we can't have C there. And D is wrong for the same reason. The first part of the sentence is not an independent clause. It couldn't be its own sentence. So once again, the answer here is A.